Recording. So welcome everyone. Today we're on part 4, which is operations and financial strategy. So we're on the last part of the course. So I hope you're all enjoying it so far. So today it's module 10, effective operations, and Elena Prashina is here today, and you met her at face-to-face a few weeks ago.
Yep.
So just before we start, I'm just going to remind you all about the WhatsApp group. Angela's been setting that up today. I think we've got 8 people on it so far. So if anybody else wants to join, make sure Angela's got your number. So I'm just think there's people in the waiting room trying to see what's happening with this. So just whenever you want to start, Elena, I'll just admit people as we're going along.
Okay. Yes. So hi again. I'm back. Today will be slightly more a sort of a me talking session. I try to integrate a few questions, and obviously, if you want me to go over something again, or if you have questions, I will be monitoring the chat, so I should be able to see. So hopefully, we will talk today. So it's quite a bit of theoretical stuff we will cover, which is all kind of linking with your journey. So according to this beautiful graphic, you started off with strategy and innovation, and you've been through a lot. So we are now at the last 3 units, and one of them is effective operations. So today's session will mostly focus on what is operations, why do we talk about it, what's the future, how does the future look like, what can we do perhaps to improve, what kind of strategies are out there for improvement. Some of that you might be familiar with. There will be some buzzwords in it, and I try to sort of put it all in context as much as possible. So if you find that I can skip for bits because you're very familiar with that, that's okay. Again, just let me know, and I will double check. So I'm quite flexible with that. So we will, if you remember, when we started off our journey together in our workshop, I was talking quite a bit about Michael Porter. And that's because a lot of business education nowadays, especially when we start talking about kind of a helicopter views of things, when we try to see organizations in context, we usually go back to him a lot. He is very fit. It's interesting because some of the theories he kind of coined or is known for, not necessarily entirely his work. He has been adapted other ideas, but he managed to market them quite well. So all of his theories, they come in nice catchy names, such as value chain, for example, or Porter's 5 forces, competitive advantage. So he established himself quite firmly in strategic management. So there are others, of course, and other theories and other ways of looking into strategy and strategic directions of companies. And I talked some a bit about it when we had our workshop. I said that, Michael Porter's view is that you are pushed into your position, mostly given by the industry, the competition, and so on. Others would say that some of it is your natural capability as well. So we have other schools of thought in here, but we kind of tend to stick or come back to Michael Porter quite a lot. So we talk about value chain today, or slightly modified version of value chain. Then we will look into the future a bit, or future or the current state, depending on which industry you work. So we will look into Industry 4.0 and what does it mean and what changes come with that. And obviously, hopefully you will walk away from the session try with some new ideas perhaps, and opportunities to perhaps review the strengths and weaknesses of your own organization, and some ideas what you could be looking at when it comes to operations. Sorry, my button doesn't work. Okay. So first, again, we look into value chain, and then we look into improvement. Usually when we teach operations, we always immediately go into improvement, and I talk a little bit about why and how that developed, and then finally the Industry 4.0. Good. So again, back to our friend Michael Porter, the Harvard professor. So if you remember, and again, please feel free to tell me that you don't need a recap, but when we talk about competitive advantage, we said that all of this kind of developed starting from the 80s. And it's because prior to the 80s, we had a world which is completely and entirely ruled by the producers. So and even prior to Industrial Revolution, we had a world where people used to be exposed to bespoke products. So if you ordered a coat in, say, 16th to 17th century prior to Industrial Revolution, you would have gone to a tailor, and the tailor would have measured you, and the product you would have received would have been well tailored. It would have been bespoke product made specifically for you. Obviously, it came with cost. Consumption generally was a lot lower. If you think about it compared to today's level of consumption, people would basically just have a few coats throughout their lives. And all the operations we would see would be geared towards delivering that bespoke experience. The way people has generally worked would be through you would probably adapt the same profession your father would have had, because you probably already had a shop, so he would leave it to you, or you would go on the route of becoming an apprentice, and for years and years of training, you then would acquire a profession, and so on. So everything was a lot slower, and again, the market was sort of dominated by the producers, the offers, and obviously there was a competition, but the majority of competition was mainly regional. So you would go to the tailor closest to you. Perhaps there was a little bit of competition between them. One was nicer than the other, but the other one would have cheaper products. But generally, we lived in a very producer-driven market. And that kind of went on through Industrial Revolution. One thing changed, though, with Industrial Revolution, of course, speed up. The processes speed up. We introduced standardization. And if you remember, in my workshop, I talked a little bit about Henry Ford, who and I recently got corrected on this. I always thought was the first one to develop a conveyor belt. That's actually not true. There was a gentleman in Birmingham who used to have a buttons factory. He was the first one to introduce conveyor belt technology. But majority, especially if you look at literature from US, a lot of it talks about how how it was Henry Ford. And Henry Ford was an engineer. He came up with a very efficient car. And that is during the time where cars used to be a luxury product. So only the very, very rich could really afford a car. But a lot of customers were really interested in his specific engine. It was very versatile and very quick. So he had a lot more orders that he could fulfill. So he was very behind, lacking behind. He would receive lots of correspondence with angry people asking where the cars are at. So he went to his factory trying to understand why or how to scale his production. And this is where he realized that the car is stationary. It's the people who come and perform different tasks and add on and improve and so on the car. So he changed one thing, and that kind of kicked off the mass production. He said people should be stationary, the car should be moving, not other way around. And that basically got adopted in various other production by various other production companies. Suddenly mass manufacturing kicked off and we got flooded with products. And in the beginning, of course, and if you look again in Henry Ford and the history of Henry Ford, he produced the same car for 60 years. Dixie was what he started off with, and the last car rolled out after he was way into his retirement. He never had to think about innovation. He never had to think about improvement. His improvement was in the production facilities. He made sure that he passed on all the efficiency he could gain through his production line to the price of the car, and he significantly reduced the price for cars. So we went from cars being a luxury item to cars being affordable, and even workers who worked in his factories could in the end of it buy a car. That was his big contribution. But again, he never had to think about, but what if the families are bigger? Or what if people need a car in the city? People need a car in the countryside. None of that was the real concern of his. He was just looking into increasing the numbers of production and generating those efficiencies. But as we had more and more products available to us, obviously then people were confronted with choices, and they start picking the products. They start deciding what do they need, and that is where the need for this competitive advantage developed. We now needed to advertise for our product. We needed to convince people that our product is much better than somebody else's product. And you remember Michael Porter, he identifies two strategies, and it's very simplistic. There are two things you could do as a producer. You either become a cost leader, so you offer the cheapest product possible on the market, and you will always find customers, because there will always be customers who want the cheapest product on the market. Of course, that is a position only one person can take, or only one company can take, because as soon as we have two companies offering the cheapest product in the market, that's not going to work. One of them has to be cheaper. So that is for one person or one company. We have the cost leader. Now everybody else who cannot match that cost structure for some reason has to, what Michael Porter called, differentiate. And this is where we define what is it about our product or our company that is different from the cost leader, which justifies the premium on price we need to pay. So there's a cost leader price, there's our price, there's a price difference in there. The price difference is what we call premium. That premium has to come from somewhere, and that something is our that bit extra we offer on top of cost leader. That is our competitive advantage. So that is essentially then how we structure our entire organization according to Michael Porter. Is we look at where is that value coming from, and of course we have our own developed capabilities. A lot of them will be historical, perhaps through our own know-how we developed, through our processes we developed, our team, our people. Some of that comes from our infrastructure we have already in place, and our databases, our processes, and some of that comes from the leadership. And we break it all down into variety of activities, and then we trace back that value, and we protect the activities and the processes where that value is created, and we obviously adapt and work on activities and processes where we identified issues. So that kind of where value chain points towards operations or leads us on to operations. And operations management is an interesting subject because in a variety of cases, very few people who actually deal with operations will be called operations managers. Some companies don't even have operations managers. They will have product managers or factory managers, or it will be some sort of integrated role in the marketing to do with product development. Some of them might be engineering, from the engineering background, and so on. Nevertheless, they deal with operations, and they effectively perform the role of operations manager, which kind of brings us into what does it mean, operations, and what is operational excellence. When we try to define operations, we have a variety of definitions. I think the most simplistic way of looking at operations is every single company out there has inputs, and those inputs could be, if we go by economist view, our land, labor, capital. So it will be some people. It will be some land, which is everything, which is natural resources, the water, wood, materials, minerals. And then we have capital. And capital is an interesting one. People usually think of capital as being money. In reality, a lot of capital is rather referring to our factories, whatever we use to produce the goods and services. So we have our inputs and we have our outputs. The outputs will be our products and our services. But something happens within the organization which transforms those inputs into those outputs. And whatever transforms those inputs, we refer to this as transformational process. And that transformational process is all operations. So operations deals with processes. Processes is the smallest unit of operations. And it looks into how it develops them, it maintains them, it looks into what do we need to improve, how do we need to improve it, and so on. So, and that is a huge area. If you think about it, everything transformation within the organization falls under operations management. And that's why if we look into improvement or excellence frameworks, we find that a lot of them deal with entire organizations. So a lot of those frameworks that come from, they don't just deal with, okay, let's just look at the factory and how do we do things more efficiently. They look at the entire organization and variety of how do we interact, how do parts of organization interact with each other, and what are the efficiencies within those interactions. So obviously, then we look into yes. When we break it down and we look into what does operations do, then it comes down to 4 really simplistic actions. We have direct, so any kind of any kind of process documentation, any sort of new product development will be within the operations management area. Design, so whatever we have, we're looking to expand, or we have new products, or we are going through change. We will have processes, and again, those processes are developed by operations management. Delivery, so any delivery, and that's kind of why we also cover services, as well as we cover as well as the traditional products. So everything to do with how does the product get to a customer, any kind of after sales services, anything to do with services in general. How does the product get back if the customer wants to return, if there's complaints, if there's any issues. So that is all operations management. And finally, the continuous search for more and more efficiency, looking into the value chain, trying to improve the processes, and so on, is the number 4, the develop area of operations management. So you see, it's a huge area which covers basically every single bit of organization, but works very closely with specifically new product development, specifically with marketing, engineering, and so on. This is a very interesting overview. It's a bit old, but I still really like it, because it shows us not that when we talk about operations, it's not just the organization we look at, but we also my apologies. We also look at how do we work with others. So there's about specific area of operations, which nowadays developed into its own sub-area, supply chain management, of logistics, where we look at how do we interact with others. And again, supply chain management nowadays not just looks into suppliers and how do we interact with our suppliers, but it also looks at our distribution network. So how do we, who's our customer, and how do we get to our customer? What kind of channels we use? And it's interesting because some companies develop products for an end customer, but the actual customers are, for example, dealers who will sell the product to the end customer. So we have that complexity within our distribution network, which is also part of operations management. So if you look at the blue box on your screen, that kind of looks into the flow between variety of operations on that supply network area. In this specific blue box, us as organization is that tiny pink square, and so we're looking at who are we in touch with? Are we in touch with all the right people? Did we pick the right suppliers? Should we expand our network? Should we try to bring it closer to our core business? Should we have second supplier just in case first something happens to our first supplier? Decisions about outsourcing, decisions about offshoring, which are two different. Outsourcing is when I give something away to a third party. Offshoring is I keep it, but I replay, or I geographically move my location, and so on. So all of that type of decisions are covered in this blue box when we look at the flow between different operations. Now, if you zoom into our company, and that is the pink box, then we see how within the company we also have always processes. So this is where we look at the operation level and how our different areas interact with each other. Who needs to do what, how this information gets passed on, how the materials gets passed on, or if we work in services, how do we organize what we do within our organization. And then finally, each of these processes, we could look deeper into them. This is the green box. This is where we look at the flow between resources. And again, in a manufacturing perspective, resources will be my materials, the flow between them. In my service, I will be looking at what are the steps, when does who gets involved with the customer when, and what is our approach to how we standardize our services, or how much can we standardize, and so on. So every single organization has those 3 levels, and a lot of that will be covered by operations. But again, in times we might have the operations managers might have different names and different titles. And very important when we look at organization, why is operations and especially improvement within the area of operations so important? Everything we do in our marketing department has to have direct link to our processes and our operations. Why? Because every single promise we make to our customer has to be delivered by operations. So if I promise my customer that they will get the products the next day, I have to have a process in place which delivers that. And of course, everything to do with where do we go from here? What is our next step? Also has to be covered by operations. So we look internal, we look external, we look on micro level. We also constantly think about the future, and we cooperate quite closely with marketing to make sure that every single promise, every single service that is out there has a process to back it up. Otherwise, we will not be able to deliver our promises. So what does it mean, again, on that value perspective, as we know it from Michael Porter, and how does that, if we look at this and refer back to our 3 levels. So again, there is variety of potential in every single step of that. There's a lot of potential in identifying and looking into processes. Obviously, there's a lot of process improvement. There's technology to look into process improvement. There is potential to identify efficiencies on operations level. And of course, when we talk about supply and supply chain, there's a lot of strategic level decisions we could be making here, which again can generate efficiencies and help us in the long run. So a lot of research, especially when we talk about, supplier strategies. Do we have a supplier strategy, or do we just tend to go with the same supplier? We used this one before, we continue to use them. Do we have any evaluation strategy in place where we actually make strategic decisions, or is it just kind of historical development we go through, same on a level of operations and processes? And that kind of sums it all up. We see our inputs, we see the transformation process, which and all the activities around that, and that create our output. Oops, I'm sorry. And then finally, and that's also very, very important, of course, the constant improvement which comes with operations management, the feedback loop, and constantly looking at whether or not we are meeting our goals, and how can we improve, and what can be done differently. Now, based on what kind of business we are and where what kind of products and services we offer, we can classify ourselves in 4 different types of businesses. And there's obviously those, depending on which type of business we are, will have its own strategies and will all have its own challenges. Type 1, so I'm just gonna need to slightly move the screen. Yes. Type 1 is usually a type of business which is quite heavily in manufacturing and everything which includes a lot of machines, usually tries to move as much as possible towards standardization. So we have quite standardized products or quite standardized services, perhaps as packages of some sort. Type 2 usually goes into professional products and services. That is a lot more project-based, a lot more targeted. Type 3 business is in design and delivery. And then finally, we have a type 4 business, which is a very innovative. And everything to do with innovation will always have quite a high emphasis on generating data, generating as much as possible, generating data as much as possible, as early as possible, so that we can make decisions as early as possible. Such is the nature of innovation. We need to be able to move away quite quickly if what we're doing at the moment is not working out. So when you look at standardized products and services, obviously a lot of it has to do with mass production, and obviously there can be variety of products within that, but here we're looking at a lot of our equipment efficiency, perhaps the layout, how we lay out our factories, how we lay out our spaces, making sure that we generate efficiency that way. If we're looking at professional products and services, so for example, this is the example your course gives you. It's about specialized knowledge and specialized techniques we have available. So this is about capturing and developing a way to again to introduce standardization into this, in the same time allowing that specialized units to develop their own expertise and giving people freedom, but in the same time generate efficiencies through introducing as much standardization as possible. Design and delivery again has to do with projects and large projects will always have the component of project management. So we're moving away from this very standardized operations into a more unique challenges. And again, here we look at our network perhaps more than we're looking into what is our company doing. So we need we try to work with a lot of subcontractors and agility, and making sure that we are remaining flexible enough for integrating new projects and facing new challenges. And again, finally, if you remember the microfresh, he's back. That is a typical example for very innovative company, and if you remember microfresh, they're moving very, very fast. So a lot of here is about making decisions very fast. Perhaps also focus is highly important here, and that's why that data generative idea, which I mentioned before, is very, very important in today's world. When we are one of innovative companies, we want to be able to make as much evidence-based decisions as possible, Therefore, we will be looking at technology and be able to adapt some sort of decisions here. And then again, some businesses will have all four of those types integrated in some way because of the nature of what they do and what's happening with that business. So we have to switch between projects, and some businesses do projects, but we also have some sort of generic processes or our generic products which happen on constant, and then we also have to adapt and innovate. So we might have all four of those challenges, all four of those types within our organization. And that essentially just means that we have to manage all of this slightly different. We have to have different approaches to all of these challenges. So yeah, here you're invited to perhaps think a little bit about your company and where would you put yourself if you had to pick, or would you say in your own business you would be covered by several different types?
Elena, just to check, are you wanting people to write in the chat?
Oh, sorry, I should have specified that, shouldn't I? Well, really, I guess speaking, yeah, let's just talk about it.
Or yeah, if everybody then just wants to unmute and speak. If anybody would prefer not to speak and put it in the chat, I can read it out, but yeah.
Gordon says one, that's good. Standardized products, yes, fantastic.
Yeah, that's what we offer, and the more standardized, the better for our ops team.
Yes,
they would love to be one product down the line.
Yeah, that is, I guess, the problem with, or not the problem, but is the challenge of standardized products. The more standardized it is, the easier it is to manage. The harder it is to perhaps switch or adapt or change if we have an update and so on. So is almost like a line you have to walk between the flexibility and standardization. Yes.
Well, I'd say as a construction company, we're a 3. That one's probably screaming out more at me, just offering services. Funnily enough, or interestingly enough, this week something has popped up with us regarding RAC, which is mostly down south at the minute, but it's actually came up as a challenge for us. So I don't know. Obviously, this is along the lines of a specialist service to be able to remove this efficiently and safely, because it is unusual that you've heard about it up here at the minute, but it is here. So I don't know if that would be. It's not innovative as in technology wise, but it's a service that's innovative at the minute. There's not a lot of people that can safely remove that at the minute. I don't know, I've thrown that in there.
No, yeah, I think that's actually quite interesting because sorry, yeah. That's one way of obviously when you have lots and lots of project work, you do still want to do something with standardization. Generally, everybody tries to move to as much standardize something as possible, because that just makes for processes, that's kind of develops that routine. So what can we from every single individual project, what can we kind of learn or derive from that, which will allow us, and if we can offer some sort of standard service on top of that, that would be good, because that's again, that's the every single project, obviously, with professional services will be extremely unique. But every time we have unique, which is such a beautiful word for business, it means, oh my God, we have to develop a whole new project. It will take a lot more time. It will take a lot more resources for us to do that. So the more we can, the more learning we can derive, which moves us towards more standard, the easier it is then to continue on, or the easier it is to assemble those projects as well. So I think it's quite an interesting example of, okay, well, we do this, but there's something here we could also offer as an extra service, kind of.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Diana's saying there's a variety. Also one. Yeah. One presentation with free in the future. Yes, great. Good. Okay, we'll keep that in mind. We'll come back to it in a bit. Right. When we move to our next one, the next big section, and that's again, improvement and operations management, they always go hand in hand, because there's no point of talking about the processes and process development if it's not gonna generate efficiency. So we specifically almost every single operations management or operations course or supply chain course will have improvement integrated. You saw it, the feedback loop is a fixed part of all processes. However, interestingly enough, when we look at research, we also see that it's a very hard thing to do. We integrate improvement into our operations. We have some sort of feedback. This course, for example, you will have some sort of feedback where you will be sent and you will be asked, how did you find it? What would you do differently? But it's immensely hard to actually improve and move away from ticking box exercise, and we talk a bit more about it. So every single organization does it. Every single organization needs to improve at all times. We do live in a business environment which is constantly changing, and adaptation has become one of the biggest challenges. So we do that. At the same time, we also struggle to do that. And we're constantly searching for new ways, new motivational tools, and so on. And sometimes we come back to the old ones to do that, because it is one of those quests we haven't quite figured out yet how we're going to solve it. Sorry, I'm gonna come back to this in a moment. My apologies. I want to come back to this. I talk about this first, and then I go back to my slides. That's just a spontaneous change. When we talk about improvement, and that's all the theory I'm going to give you today about improvement. But I think this slide, as confusing as it might look at first, actually puts it all onto one single dimension. There are a variety of strategies on improvement, and they all can be classified in 4 different categories. And just like in consultancy, a very beautiful one slide, one-ish. We can have the type of improvement we go through when we are in crisis, or if we are extremely radical, innovative company. That is not what usually companies do. That is unless you are Google X or if you're really, really in crisis, that's the only time you really see that type of improvement. We call it radical breakthrough improvement. Sometimes innovation gets put into this area, and some of the innovation happens, it's not necessarily, innovation is a beautiful word. Some of it is just disruptions on the industry. Things like internet came around and then everybody had to adapt. Was it innovation? Was it a disruption? We don't know. COVID happened. Everybody had to adapt. So I always feel like innovation is almost like it's a nice, beautiful word. It's like, oh, I innovate. In a variety of times, we have this events or breakthroughs or technology or disruptions, and we just have to adapt to them. We're not really, but we can mark it as a wonderful thing to do. So that radical breakthrough improvement, and the most common in this would be what we call business process reengineering. Now, business process reengineering, again, I guess the consultancy came up with that particular term. Again, is a beautiful term for essentially, let's just forget everything we do. We sit down and we list all the processes and we identify if there's anything in those processes which actually still is alive, is vital, can sustain us as a company, and we keep those and we strip everything else down. So it's a very painful process to go through as a company. Most of the time, it means that we will have to close down some areas of our business. We will probably have to let go of some stuff. It's never nice. It's always accompanied by radical change, or comes with change, the pain, and so it's a beautiful work for actually something quite brutal and quite horrible to go through. But if done right, and if we go through an honest process of identification, what from our processes can still be here, sometimes it can mean a rescue in a situation where we haven't been doing well for a very, very long time. So before we close down, we'd rather go for business process reengineering. So that is, however, again, that is something that whole green bubble is something we either go to when there's been a huge event or change, or if we find ourselves in a situation where we have been struggling for way too long and there's no hope inside. For everybody else who's doing well, everybody else will be engaged in what we call gradual improvement, or if you want to use the lean term from the lean methodology, kaizen, or incremental improvement. Now, the beauty of incremental improvement is that we have now so much data that we know it works. We know that as a society in a whole, as economy, as businesses, if we put us all together, we have improved significantly. So it is kind of a daily improvement where we do tiny little steps. And because it is daily, though, it can become such a routine exercise that we kind of almost don't see it, or don't do it right. So that's the challenge of it. But we know incremental improvement generally works. So even if you look at where we were historically, through incremental improvement, we got better, we got more efficient, and so on. And in incremental improvement, there's a variety of methodologies. Three most common you see on the slides. So there's a pink one, which is lean. There's a slightly purple bluish one, which is tool quality management. And there's a yellow one, which is Six Sigma. And the three of them, again, can be classed into categories of what we do and how we do it. And based on what we focus on, are we focusing on what we do, or are we focusing on how we do it? We will basically pick one of those methodologies. And I usually, when I talk about lean or when I talk about total quality management, I like to refer to them more as a toolbox, really, as or as a philosophy almost, more than a tool people implement, which is slightly different from, I guess, how business people see that, because business people tend to say, oh, lean, we implemented lean. But really what lean is more of just kind of like a direction, and as a direction it offers, if you really imagine a toolbox, it offers this variety of things we could do, and based on what kind of business you are and what kind of industry you're in, you will pull out different tools out of this box and implement them in your organization. Same with total quality management. Six Sigma is a bit different. Six Sigma is a very data-driven, very evidence-driven approach. It usually comes with its own software and lots of data. And I mean, essentially, through the analysis of that data, Six Sigma essentially dictates to us what we need to improve. So it comes more from the manufacturing. Is very common in manufacturing, and today sort of some of that is integrated into other approaches as well. So one of the very common principles of Six Sigma is that when we look into improvement, we need to first identify what will generate the most benefits. So if we look at 10 different issues, those 10 different issues, there's probably 2 or 3 of those issues. If we fix them first, we will see significant improvement in our overall performance. Some of those issues we can also fix, but they will generate relatively small improvement. So Six Sigma kind of says, okay, always do the biggest, what generates the biggest improvement first. And if you find the time and energy and resources, then we will dedicate ourselves to some of those other processes we could also improve. And that kind of principle, which is one of the fundamental principle of Six Sigma, that does get adopted in other methodologies as well. But generally, Six Sigma is that kind of data-driven, evidence-based approach to improvement. So we forget about that for now. When we look at total quality management and lean, we see 2 significant differences. Lean is, again, and I always think it's very helpful to look at history of something to understand where it's coming from. And if you look at the history of lean, we see that lean was first developed by Toyota Manufacturing. Toyota is a Japanese car manufacturer, still one of the biggest car manufacturers in the world. And when they were pushed into the global market, geopolitically by America, they entered it. But there were always other players already established, and US quite like buying American cars, Europe quite like buying European cars, and again, Toyota. If you think about Japan. Japan is a very small, very small country, highly populated, and essentially is a rock. So there's very little resources in Japan. Most of resources need to be delivered to Japan. And we have 2 problems. First of all, resources are very expensive because they have to travel and they have to be sourced externally. Second problem, we are small rock and we have a lot of people. So space is a problem, waste is a problem. Waste costs money to dispose of. And that is essentially the very foundation of lean management. Lean says we need to find out where waste is generated throughout our processes, and lean breaks waste down in 7 different wastes. So it's not just physical trash or defective products. It can be also time waste, too many processes, administrative burdens, variety of everything which slows us down, everything which generates inefficiencies. So we need to identify where that is, where is it generated, by looking into each and every single step of our production, and then we strip it. Both total quality management and lean work from when they talk about value, they both talk about value from the customer perspective. So it's a big shift, the shift I talked about, which kind of started in the 80s. With the introduction, and this is where we link back to the value chain, with the introduction of Michael Porter's ideas, with the fact that we have all those products now, and now we need to convince the customer why you should buy me and not my neighbor. With that, we see this idea that it's what the customer values that's important. What the value comes from the customer. Now, everything which does not generate any value to the customer has to go. So I'm being quite rigorous in my analysis. I'm looking into my company. If somebody has to wait somewhere, if some process needs to be done twice because we accidentally looped our processes twice around, if we're all waiting for somebody to sign off something and that signature is absolutely essential for our processes, whatever, all of that is waste. It's not generating any value to the customer. It has to go. So we need to adjust and adapt to get rid of that waste. So lean, and in all its entirety, highly focused on continuous waste reduction. So we obviously there needs to be a change as well within the workforce. So we need to kind of establish a culture where people can speak up and talk about the issues we have, the delays they experience, not just generally blaming each other, but having a very constructive conversations about delays and issues and so on. So, it took us quite a while to get to lean management the way we know it now. It took Toyota quite a while to get to where we know it now. But a lot of tools, again, if you look at lean as a toolbox, a lot of tools inside the lean philosophy is something we use daily. Teamwork is one of them. Instead of going the way we knew it from the mass production, you have your job description. This is your job. This is what you're going to do. You're going to do it every single day. We now try to introduce people to various different areas inside the company, because we realize there's a lot of potential if a person actually knows what's going on, not just in their job description, but also with different other departments. Quality circles is another thing. Where we get people from different departments together to solve problems. Things like suggestion boxes and or feedback boxes where people can just report whatever they experience, whatever bothers them. And then we look into, okay, what bothers our delivery guys, what bothers our admin people, and look how we could possibly help that. All of those were out of that lean toolbox, essentially. So, and again, lean kind of has a pattern where we have, that's really good. Everybody gets super excited, and then everybody's like, but it takes a long time, really, and maybe it's not as beneficial, and then we kind of declare lean unsuccessful and move on to next flashy new thing. But if we are not treating it as implement lean, but we treat it as a toolbox with a variety of suggestions, what we could do to identify that waste, to deal with that waste, then it actually generates quite a lot of efficiencies and works really well. Now, that's lean. Total quality management historically developed into total quality management. Started off obviously with inspections and just looking for defects. And then as we moved along, same idea, they're very similar. really the biggest difference is that lean is really focused on waste and waste reduction, while total quality management really focused on definition of quality. And what does the customer sees is very important here. So the quality is defined by the customer. That is what the customer is willing to pay that premium for. And this is what the customer values about us. Now, where does that generate? So where is my quality within my processes? And the processes which generate that quality my customer values, those will be the processes I will need to protect, I will need to develop, I will need to be very careful with. Everything that I am and I do, but my customer does not care for, that obviously will need to go. So same idea, but we're looking here at we take a slightly different perspective. But again, also total quality management gave us lots and lots of tools. So in total quality management box, we find things like improvement cycles. We find lots of monitoring tools to monitor for quality and so on. But again, both of those methodologies, they stand and fall with the definition of value. So what is it that what my customer says is quality? What is it what my customer thinks is a value? And if we work with those definitions, and they can be quite tricky to get right at times, but when they do and when they are, it is very useful. Yes, good. Jane is suggesting a break, which I think great. So that, to summarize, that is my excursion into improvement. And I believe, and I'm quite confident in this belief, this is all you need to know about improvement. There are two different types. There's a radical one, which we don't really want to do unless we have to, and there's the gradual improvement. Gradual improvement is naturally very difficult because it implies that we're doing something wrong. So it's kind of counterintuitive. It's like every day I have to come to my work and I get told that I'm great, but it would be better if I could find something, improvement. I've been reading quite a lot on psychology of improvement recently, and there's actually a lot of saying that is quite detrimental to people's mental health if we continuously tell people that you're great, but go do something better, maybe maybe find something you could do better just a little bit. So that's, I guess, why we need to focus on processes more rather than making it about people and people's personalities and so on. Anyway, hard, very hard, mentally hard generally. We need to have the culture where this is routine, but not too routine, because once it becomes too routinely, once we ask the same questions again and again, people don't take them seriously anymore. Well, what went wrong with them? Nothing, is all great, because if I say something went wrong, I have another 5 forms to fill out. I don't want to fill out another 5 forms because I already have a lot to do in my daily job. So I'd rather say nothing went wrong. That will save me from having to go through a lot more paper. So very hard to do, but if done right, can generate a lot of efficiencies. And we have 3 major toolboxes: the lean management, total quality management, and Six Sigma, which is basically all just computerized. And that is all we need to know about improvement. We got to take a break. I suggest 11 minutes till 2:15, and we reconvene here at 2:15 to finish off.
Okay.
Good.
Thanks,
Perfect.
Lena.
Thank you.
I'll pause recording.
Okay, so welcome back. Just a few things. So we pretty much almost through the operations management module. Just a few things. So coming back again to the slides I skipped before, when I went into the big overview of improvement strategies. So obviously, if we apply that improvement strategy logic to our 4 types of businesses, we will see how each type of business will have different perhaps set of tools available to them or they will be interested in using. So again, type 1, where we see the standardized products and what the standardized products mean. In that case, it's all about again, as much standardization as possible. That will generate me some efficiency. It will allow me to look for more and more higher quality, for better ingredients, and so on and so on. So if you look at the goals in type 1 business, we are evaluating our suppliers. So it's really important to have a really good strategy of how do we rate our suppliers, perhaps even revisiting those strategies from time to time, see whether it still rates what we want from our suppliers. Do we have a system of evaluation, and do we from time to time think about do we have different strategy how we approach our suppliers? Some of our suppliers might be very crucial to our business, might be our strategic partners. Some of our suppliers will be just generic suppliers, and so on. So, a frequent evaluation of that entire supply chain is very important. Efficiency and looking into whether or not we're still efficient with our use of resources and so on. Problems, and we have a variety of approaches how we solve problems of it. We have tools like cost diagrams where we try to find the root cause of a problem by going step by step, going further and further back to what generated that particular issue. And a lot of that again can be solved by introducing variety, collecting variety of people from different departments, sitting together and trying to solve problems. So again, a lot of type 1 businesses would implement tools from Box and from the quality box. There's a lot here which generates improvement. As professional services, the type 2 business, we obviously have the challenge because we have a very we have a lot of our business depends on our staff. So here is very important, not just the monitoring of what our delivery and our service delivery, but also what kind of engagement do we have with our staff? How are we looking after the people? Because we acknowledge that the people here are key to our business. So how do we make sure that they are happy? How do we look after them? In terms of further developing, are they challenged enough but not too much, not overloaded, and so on. So here we will really focus so that mentoring, supervision aspect and looking after the staff will be one of the focuses in type 2 business improvement. Again, a couple of examples. Also, the customer is very important in this area. So here we will look at how do we engage the customer. And almost everybody nowadays has to engage the customer. And we find that when we engage the customer, we find lots of really interesting things. So again, our definition of what is quality, what is value comes from the customer. So how do we collect feedback? The classic way of collecting feedback with continuous emails about, oh, please answer this and you can win a voucher or whatever, might not always generate the results we want. So what are the strategy to engage those customers and what do we do after we collected their feedback? So that is, I guess, the biggest challenge in type 2 businesses. When we look at type 3, and here we are doing this very specialized projects, if you remember. So perhaps the partner and how we deal with, who do we partner with, will be one of the main focuses for improvement. So again, having a very good database, having an evaluation system in place, which allows us to collect feedback, collect previous experiences, sort of record them somewhere so we can make use of them in the future, and they're not just sitting there as experiences. We make use from that experience. And growing and developing our network will be very, very important. So a lot of those projects are about putting the right partners in place, putting the right place in place, and making sure that the cooperation stands quite quickly. So it takes less time to interface and to adapt and to develop the processes. So again, here a lot of focus is on the planning, on perhaps having a good system in place, which also allows us to adapt the lessons learned, to integrate them into our processes, to tracking is very important. Almost, all three businesses can really benefit from a very good evaluation system. So having a good evaluation for your suppliers, having good evaluation for the previous projects, what went wrong, what went right, and so on. Again, also client communication and keeping up with having a good communication channels is very important. And then finally, just see my own slides. And finally, when we enter the type 4, and again, type 4 is a very unique type of business versus where we are very, very innovative. I would say actually here the reliance on data is quite immense in today's world, especially. Here we need to be able to almost fail projects very quickly, so that in the end of the day we invest ourselves in projects which will generate the results and not get too sidetracked. That's the important recent development in innovation is focused a lot more about how do we actually stop when something is not generating the results. I think it's hard. There's not really I think every success story, and I think we tend to see a lot of success stories. Companies tend to talk about successful products. We talk about successful CEOs. We don't talk a lot or not that much about the actual failures and or what happens to them. Microsoft tried to launch a touch screen before Apple brought up the first iPhone, and they brought up this amazing touch screen, and people were like, I don't want to touch my computer. Who said I want to touch my computer? That's weird. So they failed that project, closed it down, decided that it's a horrible idea. Then Apple brought out iPhone, and now everybody was in love with touchscreens all of a sudden, and everybody wanted to touch the screens, which is upsetting. There's a whole debate in IT industry who developed the first tablet PC. The idea, before iPad came out. Sometimes you have the right product, but the time is not right. People just don't want it. And then years go by and suddenly everybody is really interested in it and really want it. Even if you think about our workshop and the Microfresh company, he was talking about how the sofa scandal and the fact that the leather material was giving people the material. Leather used to be treated with, gave people skin rashes, and then suddenly everybody was looking for a new ingredient to substitute that component. Yeah, that's just, you know, a little bit of it is, I guess, luck, but we do need to rely here. We do need to rely on solid data analysis, and perhaps develop some sort of ways to move products along. One of the ways design schools are trying to combat that investment in wrong project is by speeding things up a bit, almost running like a crash innovation school where we try to develop a prototype as soon as possible. We see that development across.
I think you've frozen, Elena. Is it just my internet? I don't think so, is it?
Yeah, it's mine too.
No, it's gone.
Mine too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's frozen.
So Elena, you've frozen.
At least she's chosen a good pose to freeze in.
I was just thinking the same.
Good point, Phil. It's a great
Yeah.
pose to freeze it.
We should all do it when she comes back.
Okay, I'm up for that. So what have we to do?
So we've lost her completely, have we? Yeah.
Are we to repeat her freeze then? Are we all going to freeze? She goes back. Yeah, Phil, that's a great idea. Right, I'm doing it. Phil, you doing it?
Yeah, we've got to assume she's going to get back. Oh, here she is. Here she is.
Oh, here she
Alright,
is. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Sorry, am I back? No.
Yes,
Yes, you are.
You're
We were
Elena,
just
we're being
kidding
mean.
you.
Sorry.
I don't know what just happened. That everything just went away, and
You're back now.
yes, I'm sorry.
Just
I don't.
upload your slides again. Share your screen.
Yes, I will. Yeah, I apologize for that. I have no explanation for that. I am at the university, so.
Well, that's your explanation.
Right, yeah, it might have something happened with the network. The network went and reconnected again. Anyway, I'm back. Apologies for that. What was I talking about? Innovative products. Yes, bringing back closer to, yes. Feedback, customer feedback, very, that kind of become the solution. I guess we first learned from IT industry because they kept on bringing new products and it just didn't really work. People didn't like them. They didn't use stuff the way people thought they're going to use it. So what we do now is we try to release the moment we have an idea, the moment we have some sort of prototype, we try to go and test it, to collect data, and try to make sensible decisions based on data rather than being emotionally driven. But again, having said all that, I like to also point out that some of it is just luck, unfortunately. And we might have all this feedback, we might make a sensible decision and then find out that actually we were right all along. And it's just, and I like to give you a famous quote, again, Henry Ford apparently said that. He said, if I were to listen to the customers, to what they want, we would still be all riding horses. So, you know, there's a bit of a balance here to how much you want to actually listen to customers. And I believe Steve Jobs also famously said something about how you don't ask customers what they want, you just give them great products and they will get along with it. He did that with his button when he bought out the first iPad. So Yes, generically though, the literature points towards collecting customer feedback and data-driven approach tends to generate better results than listening to your intuition, and but it's not guaranteed. Right. Yes, understand the need of what's there, research and development. And there are companies out there and consultancies out there which specialize on developing new products. They are really very good with developing prototypes. So if you describe to them what you want and so on, they develop and think outside the box for people. And of course, the problem with innovation is always going to be it's very, very expensive, and we cannot really guarantee it's going to all work out. So it need to be always treated with a bit of it might not go anywhere, or it might go somewhere, maybe not now, and so on and so on. Intellectual property is a big topic in innovation. There's lots of literature written on it. You know, the voices are very divided. We used to think that intellectual property is amazing. I mean, obviously, you know, big part of capitalism as such, as our economic system. If I thought of something and this is mine, I can protect it, and it's going to be protected by me. But we see that, you know, people try to file for patent, and at times when you try to file, it will take a long time and can slow down innovation. So a lot of innovation, and there's a lot of patents already filed, which are in people's boxes. They're just there in case. And there's also a lot of my personal opinion, or my opinion informed by literature rather than my personal opinion, there's a lot more evidence on open innovation. So inviting partners to collaborate, inviting customers to collaborate, share your ideas in the development stage rather than wait till it's all done, dusted, and patent, tend to generate better results. And in fact, you know, we used to be very protective about our ideas. We used to think that if you share your idea, somebody else might go ahead and do it. However, usually it does require quite a lot of energy from somebody else to actually go and steal and do it. So the chances are not as likely as we tend to think. Not that it is not happening, it does happen, but open innovations seem to be dominating the literature, and evidence for better products and better services being developed by inviting dialogue, inviting suppliers, inviting customers as early as possible tend to generate better results. But again, I think it's also very dependent on the industry and so on. And yeah, there's a lot of discussion on intellectual property. And whether or not it's actually been done more harm to us on a societal level than it does benefit. Good, right. I'm going to come back to this. I'm just a bit conscious of time. One big session to finish off. And it is, of course, in this course, because we all know how important it is. Industry 4.0, you've probably seen the articles and in fact, we move on from 4.0, we talk about the next era of industrial revolution. And I guess it's true. It is important to speak about it. My, again, opinion informed by literature and personal opinion is that it's more about classification than it is about the act. You know, yes, there's changes. Of course, there are changes, but changes are natural. You know, if you look at the history and the pattern of history, we're constantly changing anyway. So the incremental change I was talking about, Industry 4.0 is just part of that incremental change, essentially. But why is it 4.0? So we generally speak about 4 industrial revolutions, or there's one industrial revolution we call industrial revolution. The rest is kind of management science kind of stole Industrial Revolution term and called it this way. The very first industrialization would be when we developed the steam engine. So again, thinking before the steam engine, we have this bespoke products. We have people growing into professions through apprenticeship, doing the same job till the very end, passing it on to children or apprentices, and that would be it. Steam engine came around, and there's some discussions who contributed how much to steam engine. One of the developers is actually from Greenock, right around the corner here. Anyway, steam engine started in UK, and that obviously kick-started the whole mass production. And then we have the bit with Henry Ford and conveyor belt, which apparently actually was from Birmingham and a button factory. But the conveyor belt gave us mass production. What it meant is lots and lots and lots and lots of standardized products, a very, very high number of products with very low price. So the sheer availability changed people's lives a lot. As I said, Henry Ford was able to give cars to people who worked in his factory. So cars went from looked very good to being an item a factory worker could buy. That speed up life, speed up, make people more mobile, and gave us more and more access and so on. So that is what we refer to as the first industrial revolution, the mass production. Now, the second wave would be, or the industry 3.0 essentially, would be the change from mass production to lean management. Now, when I talk about lean, it's not the cutting out waste lean I was talking about the toolbox. I'm talking more about the change to more personalized items, which will be produced using the same methods we know from mass production. So it's almost like going a step back to that bespoke era, to era where we have tailored and customized products, but also retaining all the benefits of mass production. How did we do that? Through internet, through technology. We got rid of a centralized unit which would do all the planning, use the historical demand figures, and we established a system where each unit of production could talk to each other. We broke that massive conveyor belt situation we have in Henry Ford factories, where starts from 0.0 and goes all the way till full cars rolled out into tiny little production facilities. Again, we changed the way we think about our workforce. We start thinking of them as this is your job specification. You push this button from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and you get extra bonus if you turn up to work not drunk, because obviously that work was absolutely emotionally and physically draining for people. We now teach people to do different tasks. We move them around. We want them to be happy and, or at least feel soul crushed in the end of the workday. So we try to think about workforce in a different way, and breaking those manufacturing facilities and having teams of people who are able and capable and know how to do different tasks and so on, allowed us to, as I said, retain those benefits from mass production, but in the same time offer more customized products. So now we are able to have cars all sizes, big wheels, small wheels, 4 lanes, 4 wheels, city cars, electric cars, for big families, small families, in other colors, and so on and so on. And that came obviously also with the development of more and more globalization, and but technology played a significant role in here, and especially the internet, the ability to connect all with parts, the just sheer ability for different production facilities to communicate with each other rather than all running through a central unit. That sped up so much, and that allow for that independent development and so on. So that would be our Industry 3.0, if you want. So then we arrive in the next era, and here are some quotes from what is it? I just need to move this. World Economic Forum, of course, about how it's going to change our lives and it's going to be everywhere and so on and so on. It probably will, yes, you know, like all incremental development. So when we talk about Industry 4.0, what is it? Most of it, again, is just shared technological development. We now not just have the internet, we enable robots or machines or items with connectivity. So we allow them to talk to each other, to communicate with each other. We have the technology now, the QR codes we have, which can be scanned and they contain information which then can be read by a different device and certain tasks can be performed. So that kind of what we call advanced robotics, so robots which are now able to adjust to what they need to do because they're able to communicate with each other and with other items. Artificial intelligence, we might have heard all these developments now where we have text production. So not just what we had before, not just scanning, not just improvement, but sheer production of text with ChatGPT or other artificial intelligence tools we have available will transform the way we engage with, for example, the way we do writing, the way we communicate, the way we write emails, perhaps the way we communicate with our customers. We need to find new ways to communicate to our customers. Perhaps newsletters will eventually become a thing of the past because people will be bombarded with so much text because shared text production will speed up and that it will become we will have to find new ways of engaging the customer. For example, we will have to find new ways to catch their attention. Some of that are opportunities as well. Biometric identification, for example, blockchain. And blockchains are, again, one of those complicated technologies. When they first came out, everybody was so excited and it was going to revolutionize so much and do so much change. Some parts they are very in some ways it is very important where transactions needs to be verified is very useful and important, but supply chain management unfortunately did not get revolutionized through blockchain. In fact, you know, where you didn't need that information before, you still probably not want to have that information till now. So if you look at textile industry, I had very high hopes that blockchain will improve textile industry, perhaps help us get rid of child labor or, make sure that we have better conditions throughout supply chain. That didn't happen. And I'm assuming because not all textile companies are particularly interested in knowing exactly where certain items were produced. But, you know, for example, in medical industry, it did do a lot of good. So, for example, nowadays for studies, when you enroll into studies, there's a lot of anonymity can be assured for blockchain technology. So I guess it depends really what kind of industry you're in and what kind of how you use it. But the use of blockchain is relatively limited. It is really just to verify and to keep records. The use of biometric identification is relatively limited. Cloud technologies allow us to increase sheer volume of data we have nowadays because we can now share a lot more, we can store a lot more, But it also, of course, created issues, security, IT security, system security. I mean, University of West Scotland can probably write an essay on IT security and how vulnerable we become because we no longer have a switch. Everything is in the cloud, and in the cloud it is vulnerable. So there's that development. But also the way we engage, so hybrid collaborations, us here, us me delivering this workshop, sitting in the university cubicle, and you sitting in your workplace, working the work environment generally, and the developments there. It's very, very really changed the way we engage with our workforce. So again, if you think back on what we talked before about, especially professional services and the whole mentoring and supporting our staff, because we know our staff is the key to professional services. In the same time, we have the challenge of hybrid working, hybrid collaborations. There have been several studies now coming out about the hybrid work environment, and it's one of the issues identified, for example, by research, is that mentoring and further education has become more challenging with hybrid working, because at times it's harder to identify that somebody might want to might need some mentor or might have some needs in specific areas. So quite interesting to see what problems get uncovered. So, for example, for professional services, where so much focus is put on the development of my staff and the taking care of my staff, how do we address that in the hybrid working environment, in hybrid collaborations? How do we make sure that we're looking after the staff? Internet of Things, made systems smarter, but also more vulnerable. So again, IT security has become one of big concerns. And yes, the car is now able to receive information and process information and so on, but it also is now more vulnerable to as a system itself. Mobile internet, of course, communication, and I mean, everybody who works with customers has that, how do we engage our customers? Where does engagement come from, and where do we find our customers? And of course, different types of customers are on different platforms as well. And are we using the right platform, or are we not using the right platform? The amount of companies I see nowadays on social media, trying to engage customers through social media is quite interesting, especially, companies I would have thought would not necessarily do that because the customer base might not necessarily respond to social media, but we have that challenge. Virtual reality. Okay, virtual reality is probably one of those trends which everybody talks about. It still hasn't yet quite come through. I think we tap onto it, but I don't think there's also goggles, so virtual reality goggles, and stuff which kind of comes out and everybody gets excited, but then we kind of go back on it a bit because we realize it might not always the customers are not always necessarily as ready for it as we thought the customers will be. But it's definitely going something's is gonna influence us in some ways. Yes. 3D printing, again, in terms of if you talk about innovation and what it allows us to do, that definitely helped us a lot with prototypes, with developing new products, because it significantly reduced our cost for production and so on. So we have opportunities in all these areas, and they also come with challenges. And again, depending on the business and the industry, everybody will be affected differently. But I guess the lesson here is that we have to keep an eye on them. Working from home or hybrid environment is amazing. Collaborations between people who are geographically in different areas are great. But if we have new member of staff or or a younger member staff, or somebody who change the roles, how do we support those people? How do we put a good support in place? If we have a graduate what they're called, graduate program and so on, a lot, with the development of collaborative environments, a lot of training and workshops and stuff went online. Everybody just jumped on it because it's great. You get a link and you get that. But how do we actually monitor that learning? How do we make sure that it was received and it's been used, and we are supporting people? Because the recent study shows that's been lacking. There's an area here for improvement. And of course, the whole point of isolation and does this person even know that they need to know something? Because we have the unknown unknowns where we don't even know that we didn't know something because we weren't really aware of that. So I guess more communication and so on. Good. Right. I think that brings me to my summary. Some of that will be in your workbook, things like imagine how this influences your business, and so on. And I guess it will be done differently by each of you. Just to summarize everything I said today, we looked into the value chain model. We remembered competitive advantage in Michael Porter, and we remembered how the value is generated through various areas in our business. We have some supportive activities, we have some core activities, and we learned that operations is kind of underlying in all of that, because it is in its core. We always engage in transformation activities. So we have inputs, and inputs could be our people, our know-how, our materials, whatever. We will generate some products and services. So everything in between the input and the output, everything in between is basically operations. And it's not only responsible for actually delivering that transformation, but also responsible for thinking ahead, what's going to happen after that, planning for the future, thinking of new products, thinking of new services, and that kind of where the improvement comes from. So it's not enough for us nowadays to just continue doing what we do. We also continuously need to think ahead in the business environment. And we learned that there are 4 generic approaches to improvement. Business process reengineering, that's the extreme form, the innovative form for a very rapid innovation. And then we have the Kaizen, the continuous incremental improvement, which we all engage in. We have to, but it's difficult. It's difficult because on the one hand, it's hard for us, and it's a hard truth to accept that we might be great today, but we might not be enough tomorrow. So we constantly need to figure out what do we need to do better, and also just pure pressure from everybody else as well. So there's pressure to do that, but it's hard to do, and we need to think about innovative ways how to engage incremental improvement. What kind of strategies do we have in our company to push for more improvement without it becoming a burden? Because when it becomes a tick box exercise, when everybody just fills out the form and ideally never to see this form again, it's hard. and it will not generate the results we want. So we want the staff to be engaged, but we are asking a lot. We're asking continuous engagement. So we need to change strategies, introduce new things, think of rewards, think of perhaps events and so on to make sure that we maintain the interest in incremental improvement. 3 main strategies of incremental improvement: Lean, total quality management, and Six Sigma. Six Sigma being quite manufacturing heavy and data-driven methodology, but total quality management and Lean, both very much committed to value from the customer's perspective. But total quality management is looking at where the quality is and what do we do, while Lean is looking at how we do it and continuously trying to identify that waste and get rid of all the unnecessary steps, all the unnecessary processes. And finally, we talked a little bit about the development, the next step. And I mentioned Industry 4.0 and our natural kind of how we naturally arrived at it, starting with the Taylor and so on, Industrial Revolution, Lean Revolution, Industry 4.0. The next revolution will probably have even more technology, even more data-driven solutions, even more cloud-based and so on. We need to prepare for that. We need to engage with it. We need to think about how it's going to change the behavior of our staff, and also perhaps give them the benefits of it as well. And how do we engage our customers in a world where perhaps newsletters might not be interesting anymore? Do we have any questions?
Any questions, anybody, just before we finish off?
No, thanks, everyone.
No.
Good. Okay. Well, I'm just on
Thanks,
time.
Elena. Yeah, thanks. That was great. So hopefully everybody enjoyed that. A lot of information there to process. You'll find more in the workbooks and in the module online, and we've got our peer group on Thursday. Hopefully lots of you can make it on Thursday. But that's it for today. Our next session is next Tuesday, where we'll be moving on to module 11, so the second last module, and that will be written down, but it's finance and financial management next week. So today was effective operations, so I hope you all enjoyed that. So thank you very much for coming, and hope to see most of you on Thursday, and if not, we'll see you next Tuesday. All right, thanks very much, Elena.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thanks,
Thanks very much.
Elena.
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye bye now.
See you
Bye.
later.
Thank you.